The transport shuttle touched down on Xylos 7 with a shudder that rattled every bone in my body. I'd been a xenobiologist for 15 years, but this was my first time on a Class 4 death world, and my stomach hadn't quite caught up with my brain's decision to come here. Through the viewport, I could see the research station rising from the crimson soil like a metallic flower. 4 domes connected by pressurized tubes, solar arrays catching the light of the binary stars, and beyond that, nothing but purple vegetation and orange sky as far as the eye could see. "Welcome to paradise," Commander Vance said from across the cabin, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He was already on his feet, checking his pulse rifle for the 3rd time since we'd entered the atmosphere. "Try not to touch anything, or breathe anything, or exist too loudly." I'd read the briefings. Xylos 7 had been classified as uninhabitable for human colonization, but the discovery of hyperadaptive organic compounds in the local flora had changed everything. The Galactic Science Council wanted samples. They wanted data. They wanted someone willing to spend 6 months in a tin can surrounded by things that wanted to eat them. That someone was me. The hatch hissed open, and the first wave of Xylos 7 atmosphere hit me like a physical force. It smelled like ozone and rot and something sweet that I couldn't identify. The temperature was 37 degrees Celsius, and the humidity was so thick I felt like I was breathing through a wet blanket. "Keep your helmet sealed," Vance ordered, stepping onto the landing pad. "The air's breathable for about 3 hours before the spores start colonizing your lungs. After that, you'll be coughing up purple flowers for the rest of your short, miserable life." I followed him across the pad, my boots crunching on the crystalline gravel. The research station loomed above us, its white surface streaked with orange dust from the frequent storms. I could see figures moving inside the observation deck, watching our arrival with the detached curiosity of people who'd been trapped here too long. The airlock cycled us through with a series of mechanical groans, and then we were inside. The station's interior was a sharp contrast to the alien world outside: sterile white walls, humming climate control systems, and the unmistakable smell of recycled air and instant coffee. "Dr. Sarah Chen," a voice called out. I turned to see a woman approaching, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face lined with the kind of exhaustion that comes from too many sleepless nights. "I'm Dr. Helena Morozova, Chief Xenobiologist. Welcome to the Xylos 7 research facility." I shook her hand, noticing the calluses on her palms. Not a desk scientist then, someone who'd spent time in the field. "Thank you for having me," I said. "The council was very impressed with your preliminary findings on the adaptive compounds." Morozova's smile was tight. "The council is impressed with anything that might make them money. Wait until you've been here a week. You'll see the reality behind the data." She led us through the station's main corridor, past laboratories filled with bubbling vats and humming centrifuges, past living quarters that looked more like prison cells than homes, past a common area where a group of researchers sat hunched over data pads, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of their screens. "The other scientists are finishing up their shift rotations," Morozova explained. "We run 24-hour operations here. The compounds degrade quickly once extracted, so we have to work fast." "Where's the rest of the security detail?" Vance asked, his eyes scanning every corner like he expected something to jump out at us. Morozova's expression flickered. "We have 4 guards assigned to the station. Commander Reyes leads them. You'll meet him at dinner." I caught something in her tone, a hesitation, a wariness, but I didn't press. I was new here. I didn't know the dynamics yet. My quarters were small but functional. A bunk, a desk, a viewport that looked out onto the endless purple plains. I dropped my duffel bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the alien landscape beyond the reinforced glass. Somewhere out there in that alien wilderness were organisms that could revolutionize human medicine. Organisms that could adapt to any environment, heal any wound, fight any disease. Organisms that could make us immortal. And they were guarded by monsters. I'd seen the footage from the reconnaissance drones. The predators of Xylos 7 were unlike anything in Earth's history. They moved in packs, their bodies shifting and flowing like liquid shadow, their maws lined with teeth that could shear through steel. They were intelligent, organized, and utterly without mercy. I pulled up the research files on my data pad, scrolling through the images and reports. The predators had been designated Xylos 7 alpha predators by the Science Council, but the researchers had given them a more colorful name, hellhounds. Because that's what they looked like, dogs from hell. Dinner was a tense affair. The station's mess hall was crowded with researchers, all of them eyeing the newcomers with a mixture of curiosity and resentment. I'd expected a warm welcome. I was here to help, after all. But the atmosphere was thick with something I couldn't quite identify. "More lab rats from Earth," a voice muttered behind me. I turned to see a burly man with a scar running down his cheek, his uniform marked with the insignia of station security. Just what we needed. "Commander Reyes," Morozova said sharply. "These are our new colleagues. Dr. Chen is a xenobiologist of considerable reputation. Commander Vance brings 20 years of military experience." Reyes snorted. "Military experience? Against what? Humans. The predators out there don't give a damn about your experience, Vance. They'll tear you apart just as fast as they'd tear apart a civilian." "I've been in combat," Vance said, his voice dangerously calm. "I've faced enemies that would make your predators look like house cats." "You've been in combat against people," Reyes shot back. "Not against things that can smell your fear from 3 kilometers away. Not against things that hunt by sensing the electrical impulses in your nervous system. Not against things that—" "Enough," Morozova said. "We're all on the same side here. We're all trying to survive." The meal continued in awkward silence. I picked at my food, some sort of rehydrated protein that tasted like cardboard, and tried to make sense of the dynamics I was observing. The researchers seemed exhausted, on edge. The security personnel seemed scared, despite their bluster. And everyone seemed to be watching everyone else with a degree of suspicion that went beyond normal workplace politics. After dinner, Morozova pulled me aside. "I should warn you about something," she said quietly. "The predators have been getting bolder, more aggressive. We're not sure why, but something's changed in their behavior patterns." "What kind of changes?" I asked. 6 weeks ago, they started approaching the perimeter fence. Not attacking, just watching, standing there for hours, staring at the station. It's like they're studying us." I felt a chill run down my spine. That's not typical predator behavior. "No, it's not. That's why the council sent you. They want to know what's happening out there. They want to know if the predators are adapting to human presence, or if something else is going on." "What do you think?" Morozova's eyes were tired. "I think we're not the apex predators on this planet. I think we're the intruders, and I think the local residents are getting tired of having us in their home." My first week at the station was a blur of data analysis and sample collection. I worked alongside the other researchers, learning the intricacies of the hyperadaptive compounds, developing new extraction methods, trying to unlock the secrets of the alien biochemistry. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It started with small things, a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision, a sense of presence when I was working alone in the lab, the feeling of eyes on my back when I walked through the station's corridors. I told myself it was just the stress of the new environment, the isolation, the constant threat of the predators outside. But I knew better. The predators were out there watching, waiting, and they were learning. It happened on my 10th day at the station. I was in the observation deck, running through the data from the latest reconnaissance drone flights. The screens showed a panoramic view of the surrounding wilderness, purple vegetation, orange sky, the occasional flash of movement as some alien creature darted through the underbrush. And then I saw them. A pack of predators, maybe a dozen of them, gathered at the edge of the clearing that surrounded the station. They were just sitting there, their shadowy forms barely visible against the vegetation, their heads tilted in that unnerving way they had, as if they were listening to something we couldn't hear. "Morozova," I called out, "you might want to see this." She joined me at the observation window, her face going pale as she saw what I was looking at. "Damn," she whispered, "they've never come this close before." "What are they doing?" "I don't know. It's like they're waiting for something." We watched in silence as the predators continued their vigil. They didn't move. They didn't attack. They just sat there, their liquid bodies shimmering in the alien sunlight, their glowing eyes fixed on the station. It was the most unsettling thing I'd ever seen. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of the predators outside. The data from the reconnaissance drones suggested that their behavior was becoming more organized, more purposeful. They were coordinating their movements, communicating with each other in ways we didn't fully understand. And they were getting bolder. I must have dozed off at some point, because the next thing I knew, I was being shaken awake by Morozova. "Sarah, wake up, something's happening." I sat up, my heart pounding. "What is it?" "Come with me, quickly." I followed her through the darkened corridors of the station, past the living quarters of the other researchers, past the main laboratory, past the security checkpoint where Commander Reyes was frantically checking his weapons. "What's going on?" I asked. "The perimeter fence has been breached." We reached the observation deck just as the first alarm began to blare. Through the reinforced glass, I could see the predators swarming across the compound. There must have been 50 of them, their shadowy bodies flowing like liquid night, their maws gaping wide with rows of glistening teeth. The security guards were firing their pulse rifles into the mass, their weapons spitting blue streaks of energy that illuminated the night. But the predators seemed to absorb the blasts, their bodies rippling and reforming like water. "They're getting through," Vance shouted, his face a mask of desperation. "The fence is down. We need to fall back to the inner perimeter." The researchers were scrambling for their weapons, their training taking over despite their obvious fear. I grabbed a pulse pistol from the armory, my hands shaking as I checked the charge. "What about the samples?" Morozova called out. "We can't lose the samples." "Forget the samples," Vance roared. "We need to survive." The predators were inside the compound now, their howls echoing off the station walls. I could hear the screech of tearing metal as they clawed at the outer doors, their relentless assault threatening to breach the inner perimeter. We retreated into the main laboratory, sealing the doors behind us. The room was dark except for the emergency lights, and the air was filled with the sound of our ragged breathing. "How long can we hold out?" I asked. "Not long," Vance admitted. "The doors are reinforced, but those things can tear through steel. We need a way out." "There's no way out," Reyes said bitterly. "We're trapped. We're all going to die." And then I heard it. A sound that cut through the chaos like a knife. The predators had stopped their assault. We waited in the darkness, our weapons trained on the sealed doors, our hearts pounding so loud I could hear them echoing in my ears. And then the doors began to open. Not with violence, not with the screech of tearing metal, but with a smooth mechanical hum. The predators were opening the doors. I raised my pulse pistol, my finger tightening on the trigger, ready to fight to the death. But what I saw on the other side of the door made me stop. Standing in the corridor, surrounded by the shadowy forms of the predators, was a figure unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was one of them, but different, larger, more imposing. Its body was a shifting mass of darkness, its eyes glowing with a cold intelligence that was almost human, and it was wearing something, some kind of ornate harness that marked it as the leader of the pack. The Alpha. It stepped into the laboratory and the other predators flowed around it like a shadowy tide. They didn't attack. They didn't make any sound at all. They just stood there watching us. The Alpha walked toward me, its movements fluid and graceful. I could see the detail in its form now, the subtle patterns that rippled across its surface like oil on water, the faint luminescence that pulsed from its core. It stopped in front of me, and I felt the weight of its gaze. And then it spoke. Not with words, but with something else. Something that bypassed my ears and went straight to my brain, a flood of images and emotions that I could barely process. It was showing me its world, the world before we came, the rich, vibrant ecosystem that had existed here for millions of years, the predators hunting and playing and living in their complex social structures, the beauty of a world untouched by human ambition. And then it showed me what we had done. The research station, the samples we had taken, the animals we had experimented on, the damage we had inflicted on their home. I felt the Alpha's anger, and it was like a physical force. I felt its confusion at our actions, its fury at our intrusion, its determination to protect its pack. And I felt something else. Something that surprised me. The Alpha was not attacking us. It could have killed us all with a thought. It could have called its pack to tear us apart, but it hadn't. It was giving us a chance. The Alpha looked at me, its eyes boring into my soul, and I felt its question. Why are you here? I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. How could I explain the thirst for knowledge that had driven me to this place? How could I explain the desperate hope for a cure that had consumed humanity for centuries? How could I explain the arrogance that had made us believe we could take whatever we wanted from this world without consequence? But I had to try. The compounds, I said, my voice shaking. We need them. They can help us. Our people are dying. We came to find a way to save them. The Alpha tilted its head, as if processing my words. I could feel its consciousness pressing against mine, probing, testing. You take from us, and you give nothing. I know, I said. I know we made a mistake. We should have asked. We should have tried to understand. The Alpha made a sound that might have been amusement, a low rumble that vibrated through the room. You are the first of your kind to say this. The others do not understand. They see only what they can take, not what they can learn. I looked at the predators surrounding us, their glowing eyes fixed on me, and I felt something shift inside me. They weren't monsters. They were beings. Complex, intelligent beings with their own culture, their own values, their own way of seeing the world. And we had treated them like vermin. The station will be dismantled, I said. All of the research will be stopped. We will leave this place and never come back. I give you my word. The Alpha regarded me for a long moment, its eyes searching mine. And then it nodded. The Alpha turned to leave, and the pack flowed after it like a shadow tide. But before it disappeared into the corridor, it paused and looked back at me. You will be the one who returns. What? I asked. What do you mean? When your kind has learned to respect us, when you have learned to speak without taking, when you have learned to listen. And then it was gone. The pack withdrew from the station as silently as it had arrived. We waited in the laboratory for what felt like hours, our weapons still raised, our hearts still pounding. And then slowly, the tension began to ease. They're gone, Vance said, his voice hollow. They're actually gone. I collapsed onto the floor, my legs no longer able to support me. The pulse pistol slipped from my fingers, clattering against the metal surface. Sarah, Morozova said, kneeling beside me. How did you do that? How did you make them stop? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the Alpha had given us a chance. A chance to do the right thing. a chance to make amends for the damage we had caused. "We need to call the council," I said. "We need to tell them what happened here." "The council will never agree to dismantle the station," Reyes said. "They've invested too much in this operation." "They'll have to agree," I said, "because if they don't, the Alpha won't give us another chance, and next time it won't just be the station that falls." Part 2: The Aftermath. The weeks that followed were a blur of chaos and uncertainty. The council, predictably, was furious. They demanded a full report on the incident, accusing us of incompetence and negligence. They threatened to have us court-martialed, to have us stripped of our positions and disgraced. But I had the recordings. I'd been wearing a body camera throughout the encounter, and the footage was undeniable. The predators, standing in the corridor, showing no aggression. The Alpha, approaching me, communicating in ways that challenged everything we thought we knew about alien intelligence. And me making a promise that would change everything. The council couldn't ignore the evidence. The footage was shared across the Galactic Alliance, sparking debates and arguments that would rage for months to come. Some called for immediate withdrawal from Xylos 7. Others argued for a more aggressive approach, insisting that we needed to demonstrate our strength and assert our dominance. But I was invited back to Earth to testify before the Alliance Council. To explain what I had seen, what I had experienced, and why I believed that the Alpha was not our enemy. It was raining in New York when I arrived at the Alliance headquarters. I stood on the balcony outside my apartment, watching the rain streak down the glass, and I thought about the Alpha, about the way its consciousness had pressed against mine, the way its emotions had flowed through me. I thought about its question, "Why are you here?" And I wondered if I had given the right answer. The Alliance Council chamber was a vast, circular room filled with representatives from every member world. They sat in tiered seats, their faces a mixture of curiosity and skepticism as I stood before them. "Dr. Chen," the chief counselor said, a stern-faced woman from Mars who looked like she'd been born with a stick up her backside. "You've been summoned to explain the events that occurred on Xylos 7. We've reviewed the footage. We've heard Commander Vance's testimony. We know what happened. What we don't know is why you felt it was necessary to make promises that you don't have the authority to keep." I took a breath, steadying myself. "With respect, Counselor, I had no choice. The Alpha had already breached the station. We were outnumbered and outgunned. I did what I had to do to save our lives." "You surrendered," the counselor said flatly. "You made an unauthorized agreement with an alien species that you had no authority to negotiate with." "I made a choice," I said. "A choice to survive, and a choice to do what was right." The counselor leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "And what exactly do you think is the right thing to do here?" I met her gaze. "We need to listen to them. We need to understand what they want, what they need, what they're trying to tell us. The Alpha didn't attack us out of malice. It attacked us because we were hurting its world." "You can't be serious," another representative said, a corpulent man from the Venusian colonies. "These creatures are animals, dangerous animals. We should be figuring out how to kill them, not how to negotiate with them." "Animals don't wear harnesses," I said. "Animals don't communicate complex ideas with images and emotions. The Alpha showed me its world. It showed me what we had done to it. And it showed me mercy, even though it had no reason to." The chamber erupted into murmurs of disagreement. I could feel the resistance in the room, the anger at being challenged, the fear of the unknown. But I wasn't backing down. "The Alpha told me that we would be the ones to return," I said, "when we had learned to listen, when we had learned to speak without taking, when we had learned to respect the world we were in." "And what do you think that means?" the chief counselor asked. I took a breath. "I think it means that the Alpha is willing to work with us, but it also means that we need to change our approach. We need to treat Xylos 7 as a partner, not as a resource. We need to negotiate, not exploit. We need to prove that we can coexist. The debate that followed went on for days. The council was deeply divided. Some representatives saw my encounter with the Alpha as a breakthrough, an opportunity to establish diplomatic relations with an intelligent alien species. Others saw it as a threat, a sign that we were losing control over the galaxy we thought we had conquered. I didn't care. I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had felt. And I knew that the Alpha was watching us, waiting to see if we were capable of change. The months passed, and the station on Xylos 7 was dismantled as promised. The samples were returned to their original habitats. The researchers were evacuated, their equipment packed away, their experiments abandoned. But I stayed. The council had granted me special permission to remain on the planet, to serve as a liaison between humanity and the Alpha. It wasn't an easy decision. I knew I'd be putting myself in danger, risking everything for the chance to communicate with a species that had nearly killed me. But I couldn't walk away. I'd made a promise to the Alpha, and I intended to keep it. The new station was smaller, less obtrusive. It sat on the edge of the clearing, built from sustainable materials that blended into the surrounding environment. There were no research labs, no extraction equipment, no weapons. Just a simple building where I could live and work and wait. And wait I did. For months I sat in the station, watching the wilderness through my viewport, hoping to see the Alpha again. I studied the predators' behavior, documenting their movements, their social structures, their communication patterns. And I talked to them. Every day I would go out to the edge of the clearing and speak to the predators. I told them about Earth, about my people, about our history and our hopes and our fears. I told them about the mistakes we'd made and the lessons we'd learned. And they listened. It was a year after the attack when I saw the Alpha again. I was sitting on the edge of the clearing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, when I felt a presence at the edge of my consciousness. You have come back. I turned to see the Alpha stepping out of the vegetation. It was just as I remembered it, large, imposing, its body shifting like liquid shadow. Its eyes glowed with that cold intelligence, but I could feel something else in its gaze now, something like approval. I told you I would, I said. You kept your word. Your kind has left our home. The damage is healing. I'm glad, I said. I told you we could learn. The Alpha sat down on the ground, its massive form settling onto the purple grass. I could feel its consciousness reaching out to me, probing gently, not with malice but with curiosity. You are different from the others, the Alpha said. You listen, you learn, you do not take. I nodded. I've been trying to understand, to see your world the way you see it. What have you learned? I thought about the months I'd spent watching the predators, studying their behavior. I thought about the complex social structures I'd observed, the emotional bonds they formed with each other, the way they cared for their young. Your people are more like mine than I ever imagined, I said. You love your families, you protect your territory, you want to live in peace. The Alpha tilted its head. Your kind does not understand peace. Your kind takes what it wants and destroys what it cannot take. Some of us, I said, not all of us, I'm trying to change that. Why? I met its gaze. Because I've seen what we could become, a species that works together with others, a species that learns from its mistakes, a species that earns the trust of those it meets. The Alpha was silent for a long moment. I could feel its consciousness working through my words, processing them, testing them. And then it spoke. You have earned my trust, Sarah Chen, and your people will earn it as well, in time. Part 3, The New Era. The diplomatic mission to Xylos 7 was unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. I led a team of scientists and diplomats to the planet, bringing with us a small delegation from the Alliance Council. We landed on the edge of the clearing, careful not to disturb the predator's habitat, and we waited. The alpha came to us at dusk. It stood in the center of the clearing, surrounded by its pack, its eyes fixed on me. "You have come," it said, "and you have brought others." I nodded. "These are my people. They came to listen." The alpha regarded the delegation with those glowing eyes, and I felt its consciousness sweep across them, probing, testing. "They are afraid," it observed. "They are trying to understand," I said. "They've never met anyone like you before." The alpha made that low, rumbling sound again. "They will learn as you did, as your people will." The negotiations that followed were the most challenging of my life. The Alliance Council had come to Xylos 7 with a simple offer. We would share our knowledge and technology with the Alpha and its people, and in return, the Alpha would allow us to study its world and its compounds in a controlled, respectful way. But the Alpha had its own conditions. "We will not be subjects of your experiments," it said. "We will not be taken from our home. We will not be treated as resources to be exploited." I nodded. "That's fair." The Alpha tilted its head. "We will share our knowledge with you, but only if you share yours with us. We will work together, learn together, grow together, as equals." I looked at the council representatives. They were uncomfortable, unsure, their faces betraying their anxiety at being challenged by an alien species. But I knew what I had to do. "Agreed," I said. "We will work together as equals." The Alpha nodded, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me.